Good morning, everyone. And today I would like to welcome Mr. Werner Fischer, who has an amazing profile and experience. I am just amazed at this young age. He had been engaged with so many projects all over the world, and especially in one of those pressing areas of sustainability and smart solutions. And even more excitement is that he has been involved with the projects in India, in Andhra Pradesh, very next to our door, East Godavari. So, being an alumni of UC Berkeley, I'm sure your experience and the learnings you carry from one of the best universities in the world would be an enriching experience that you will be sharing with our students today, Mr. Warner. And we, as well, not only at the university level, but even the country as such, we are working hard and moving towards sustainability at all levels, be it vehicles, be it farming, be it electricity or the power. There are many things and many facets of sustainability that the country is working on. And this is one of those very important and vital topics which we personally and as a nation also consider it. And you being from the same area with such rich experience, I'm sure the students or the participants will have a wonderful time interacting with you and learning from your experiences. I understand that you had been with Niti Aayog, with the government of Andhra Pradesh, with the Salesforce, with the Tatas. So, I mean, I'm just overwhelmed with your experience, and I'm myself looking forward to what you have to say and what you have to share. So, with on behalf of the entire university and the SRM family, I really welcome you on board today. And we will be having other participants joining in, but we can definitely move forward. And yeah, it's all yours now.
Thank you so much for the very warm welcome. I'm sorry. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. And as ma'am said, I'm very much involved, professionally and also personally with Andhra Pradesh in your beautiful state. I spent 1 year in Andhra Pradesh living in East Godavari, and the relationships I built are to this date, right? So I'm still connected to this community. I'm still connected to India a lot. I work with a ex-colleague from Smart Villages from the project ma'am was telling you. And so I'm very much still involved with India, and I'm always curious what's happening in your beautiful country. And I want to talk about this today, about innovation for sustainable smart solutions. And I want to start with a very quick introduction about myself, and then start from a very macroeconomic view on India, why India is a platform to drive new sustainable growth through innovation. And then I want to talk about the project I was engaged and involved with in Andhra about smart villages, and I want to talk how technology can impact people. And eventually Sandeep asked me to share some of my journey with you guys, so I briefly share a little bit about my journey and my learnings. So please note down any questions during the presentation, and I'm trying to answer as much or many as possible then after my session. And I think I have around 40 minutes. Sandeep, please step in if I'm going too far, right? Please just be free to, give me some heads up.
Sure.
Okay. So what am I doing these days? I'm currently working as a business consultant. I'm working with the Syzygy Group, and the subdivision is different. There's a large strategic management consultancy and marketing consultancy, and I'm engaged or I work for clients such as Bosch from automotive, or Husqvarna. They're more like in the gardening and in the agriculture field. Besides that, I'm an advisor for still for UC Berkeley. I'm still engaged with UC Berkeley. I work as an advisor for a Rebuilding India initiative, and I had the pleasure to be part of a delegation last year to initiate partnerships with the Planning Commission of India, which is Niti Aayog. And I'm also an advisor for BrightMind, which is a edtech startup based in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley, and they are about to revolutionize how we consume and produce educational content. And additional projects revolve around my book. We published that book 1.5 years ago about this project in Andhra Pradesh and beyond in India about smart villages. And also I'm working with a colleague from India, actually from Delhi, on a market potential index. And I want to talk about this later. But first of all, I want to start with my view on India, which is to me a platform to drive new sustainable development for innovation. And I want to briefly share my view, and as a upside, so to say, India is being seen as a heavy competitor to China. India has faced economic stability and is about to really dig into the growth game and become very large in economic size. India has applied very, very innovative business reforms that are providing to be a game changer. India faces great digital competitiveness, will become one of the largest consumer markets, and is already one of them. And it's transforming towards an impact economy, as Ma'am was saying in the introduction. That's very important to India, and I want to talk a little bit more in detail about that. There are some downsides, of course, still challenges, slow processes, or the market is very diversified, but there are means to cope with that or cope them. So let's dig into some of the things I'm really curious and excited about. So India has a new geopolitical role. So I was recently in a conference, and we were talking in the Berkeley Innovation Forum about exactly this topic. And one of a very eminent professor from Berkeley, he said, like multinationals, like, you know, big companies like, you know, Nestle or Apple or you know, Facebook or whatever we have, right? They need to decide on what side they stand. They cannot just stand on the fence between authoritarian and liberal systems in long term. They really need to decide, okay, I'm going with the liberal system, or I'm going with the authoritarian systems like China, right? So for India, it's a blessing in disguise, because India is in fact the largest democracy on this planet, and through this new situation, it attracts more foreign capital, and these multinationals, they can really define their future growth perspectives in India, because all of the, you know, developed markets, they are very saturated and there's not much growth left. So that's a very positive thing, and that also fosters innovation, you know, influx of high tech, and also a new growth. Coming to growth, as you can see, India is on the way to become world leading. You guys have now 9.5% growth in 2021. It's projected to be 8.5 in 2022. So these are huge growth numbers that even China doesn't have anymore. And there's projections that India is overtaking China and becomes the third largest economy in 2031. So that's not that far. It's like 8 to 9 years, right? Also, India has applied very great business reforms. So this is the ease of doing business index that's measured from World Bank. It's measured across 190 countries. And these are some of the variables they are measuring. And India really stepped up their game from being 139 out of 190 countries up to 63 in 2020. So there's a huge improvement. In terms of digital competitiveness, this is the Digital Readiness Index from Cisco, and it measures the readiness in terms of being digital of a country. And these are some of the indicators. I don't want to get too much into detail, but what we can see is that it says India is accelerating, right? 9 or 10 out of 25. But for me, that means way more than this number. It means that given the massive amount of people and the very, you know, segmented population, having very rich people, having very poor people, on average, that means India's digital readiness is great, and it just shows how much potential it will have in the future, right? I was in a small village, and the digital readiness is astonishing. So a glimpse in the future is like, or a glimpse now is like, Zomato had recently a 1.3 billion IPO in 2021, right? And it's a digital platform. So it just shows how strong India will become even more in the future when it comes to being digital and working digital. We can also see that India becomes one of the not only the largest, but also the most lucrative consumer markets in the world. Here's an illustration about households, like numbers of households and how the distribution changed throughout time. And we can see that in 2005, there were only a very, basic level of very, high in income and upper middle income segments. And it's changing dramatically, right? So again, projections say that in 2030, India's, consumers' expenditure, like the market, will be around $6 trillion annually. And in comparison, the US market expenditure, or like the household expenditure, is 13 trillion in 2021, but that means it's saturated. It's not going to grow anywhere, right? But India is taking a lot of shares in the future and already has. Again, that will foster a lot of innovation. Some of the downsides, I mean, bureaucracy is a bottleneck. From the ease of doing business index, it takes a lot of time to register business, or commercial disputes can arise, and it takes a long time to resolve them by court. But India is doing a lot of good things, like Startup India scheme, to really cope that and really be very progressive towards improving them. Also, the market is very diversified, right? I don't need to tell you this, but what I feel, and my intuition says, and my expertise and my experience, so to say, is that digital transformation can really cope this, or make even this issue obsolete when having like AI and ML to really target consumers through digital means, and you're overcoming these boundaries of different consumer behavior or demographics. Now I want to briefly talk about impact economies. And what's impact economies, where is it coming from? And so the invisible hand that guides markets creates trouble. So when Adam Smith published in his book, The Wealth of Nation, first this concept of the invisible hand, he described it very well and say that everything we optimize, like the individual, is driven by pure self-interest, right? And that means that the invisible hand fosters or creates an equilibrium, and it will have a positive effect on society. And we clearly can see that negative effects arise, right? Like inequality is pretty high in capitalistic countries like Europe or India. So there's a need to evolve this, because that was in the 19th century, right? We're now 200 years later. So optimization requires not just profit, but also impact, meaning that progressive individuals and corporations have already started to open their economic guardrails to, so to say, I'm not just looking after profit, but I'm looking after social impact or ecological impact. And we clearly see that impact is a gravitational pull for the private sector participation, because let's be honest, no corporation on this planet can ignore climate change or the social inequality. So they need to do that. And if you just look in the numbers, the SDGs, to achieve these in 2030, there's still $30 trillion of funding lacking. If you compare this expenditure to OECD governments, they invest alone 10 trillion every year in education and health, right? But that's not enough. So where does the money come from to fill that gap is basically, we can see that the global investment pool totals $215 trillion, and the company, all companies valued at the stock exchanges globally are 75 trillion. So it's an easy math, right? There's a lot of money in the private sector, and we need money to cope our challenges, but there needs to be incentives. And the incentives is that being good is not just a charity. No, it creates impact, it creates economic impact, it creates money for these businesses. So fulfilling or succeeding in SDGs translates into a $12 trillion opportunity and can create up to 380 million new jobs by 2030. So now I want to talk about how these impact economies can be determined and sort of ranked and compared. And me and my colleague, we developed last year a market potential index to derive potentials to conclude the overall market potential for a business case or for a business. If you want to tap into India, for example, we can really compare this market potential across 30 largest economies, and it leverages 140 different indicators from indexes just like World Bank or IMF or World Economic Forum. And I don't want to talk or go into detail very much here. It has like these perspectives of economic, regulatory, demographics, technological, social. So they are derived from a very standard market research framework that is available in the literature. But we added the impact component, right, to really show how our companies, governments and countries transforming towards impact. Being impact driven, meaning impact is a very big variable to optimize. So we integrated the component of impact. And how did we measure this? It's through climate mitigation from the public sector, like how much policy investments goes to climate mitigation, then the industry emission progress, industry ESG compliance, like how well are companies aligned with ESG regulatories. And ESG is like a framework that measures ecological, social, and governance of a company, like being a good corporate citizen, being not just profit driven, but taking care of the environment and their stakeholders, right? Also, we measured impact investing dominance because that's a financial tool that really drives the impact economy, and eventually climate risk on market. So if you look into the data, these are like some of the largest economies, and on the left column, you can see the traditional MPI, the market potential index, and on the column next to it, you can see the impact adjusted MPI, and that's how I ranked this table. So let's just have a quick look into that. If we see US, right? What's very interesting here is that we need to look into the change. The change reflects the discount the impact had on the traditional general market potential index, right? So we can see that the US has around 5% discount, meaning they're doing okay. India, on the other hand, has 7.5% discount through the impact adjustment. And if we go in another example, we can see France has around 3%, and Mexico has, again, some 7.5 to 7.66, right? So what we clearly see here is that emerging economies tend to have more difficulties transforming towards impact-driven markets. And I want to show why today, and also what it means and what opportunities evolve around through this. So I'm doing a quick example and compare the US versus India. And we start with with the energy transformation. And you can see India's energy transformation is very promising. We can see that both countries, like the US and India, they reduced emissions through power sector or from the power sector by 18% in the US and 16% in India between 2014 and 2019. And at the same period of time, the growth of the share of the renewables, they really drastically improved by 27% in India. So what's the difference, right, between these countries is that between 2013 and 2018, the transport emissions grew by 26% in India, while in the US growth slowed down about 4%. And so I'm concluding here that increasing per capita income and population, and also the need to more mobility, leads to more mobility and housing demand, and sort of that, put some challenges to that. But on the other hand, it gives a great venue for innovation, because that's clearly where, you know, businesses and technology companies need to, you know, pick their brains and create new technologies or new solutions to cope this, right? To make mobility, for example, very sustainable. If we look in the ESG compliance, that's very interesting to look at from the US perspective, and I'm arguing that's a double-edged sword. So the ESG compliance is basically measured over sustainability profiles of companies that are listed on the stock market and on the national equity markets, because everyone is, they need to publish their report and their ranking, right? So we can see that the US is doing well and India is doing okay. But what's really interesting is that there's a link between, you know, like countries that are doing really well and countries are not doing well. And we can see that US is doing well because the stock market is very diversified, and, you know, all the old industries like fossil fuel and this, they sort of, you know, got kicked out of the stock market or have not much weight anymore. And high-tech companies like Apple are very dominating, right? Market capitalization is just insane what's Apple having right now. So they're doing good because Apple is very good. They commit to a net zero, complete business from sourcing to consumption to be net zero by 2030. But there are companies that are not doing so well in ESG, like Facebook and Amazon. And I'm saying here that it kicks back on countries like India, because they are doing business as well in India, like Amazon, right? So if US companies are behaving not well, it kicks back on India. So this is a very interesting dynamic, and we need to look into this and also need ways of coping with them, because that's clearly not fair. The next one, India's climate progressive, right? So India is moving towards, you know, climate mitigation policies, and India in 2020, India was I think it was the only country that was 2-degree compatible for 2050. And that was just wow, right? Like India is so progressive. And unfortunately, after Glasgow last year, India stepped down a little bit in terms of the time frame is now 2017 instead of 2050. But what we can see here is that India has very progressive policies. And that's what's very interesting for innovation here, that India sets sort of the guardrails, the play rules for, you know, companies to create new innovation that align with this very progressive policy. And that's a very good glimpse in the future as well. The last variable I want to look into in terms of transforming towards an impact economy is impact investing. And impact investing is now, I think, asset under management are $1 trillion, around $1 trillion. And it started very, very low with a few hundred millions in 2010. So there's a massive growth in this. And that basically means earning return on investment, and you get also measured impact like social impact or ecological impact. And what we can see with India is that India accounts for 6% asset under management. But what's really interesting is that every third impact investor holds some allocation to India, meaning this market is really, really important and relevant. And it just means it will grow like anything in the future. And that will also facilitate the impact transformation for India massively. Let me conclude the segment, my view on India, and also why India is transforming towards a impact economy and a very powerful platform to foster innovation. To me, India has like an unprecedented chance to lead our needed 21st century transformation, coupling innovation with impact. Why is that so? We saw that developed countries tend to have it easier right now based on the data, but they need to restructure right, and adjust for becoming an impact economy. Everything is already there. And it can be very tricky in terms of political power and in terms of adaptation by the citizen, right? Because people are used to things how they are and how they were, and they might be not open to change their behavior or change the way they grow or develop. On the other hand, emerging economies can rethink their entire development strategies fundamentally, right? While growing, while developing, you can couple this with impact. And a growing middle class requires products and services that can be now re-innovated or in the future before being scaled. And I'm talking about this in a little bit in a few minutes about what we did in Andhra. India can really leapfrog this impact transformation when redesigning their foundation for development and growth instead of remodeling what's already there, like what developed countries need to do. So that's a major advantage I see here. And they can, like India can become a role model for the whole world when coupling impact with business by becoming one of the largest economies through its innovation platform. I think, yeah, time is okay. So smart villages. I want to talk now how, you know, the work I was doing and we were doing in Andhra Pradesh and still doing in Andhra Pradesh sort of aligns with what I talked, right? Because we were working towards impact economies. So you see on the left side, you see the book. Me and two professors from UC Berkeley published, you know, over a year ago. And on the right side, you see the team in 2017 with your former chief minister, Chandrababu Naidu. And this was a open innovation forum in Vijayawada where we commenced the scaling phase of smart villages to 472 villages in Andhra Pradesh. And you can see me next to your former leader, and it was such an honor to, you know, be there and be part of this great movement. And let me talk briefly about smart villages. So the model is very simple, basically. At a glimpse, we want to empower rural populations through open innovation and digital transformation. And I want to briefly talk about some, you know, the design and the concepts that really built this whole thing. So on the left side, you can see our triple helix. That means three big players are, you know, defining how a country grows, how innovation sort of spurs growth and development. And the governments are traditionally funding universities with the money. Universities create IP, universities create human capital, and they create startups, right? People from university, they go into jobs, they you know, create new ventures, new businesses, and these corporations eventually, they pay tax money back to the government. So this circle is sort of a closed circle, and what Smart Villages is doing, that the rural community is in the center and sort of participates in that innovation cycle. And our concepts or our, you know, methodologies are this triple helix, what I just explained, also social capital, meaning the importance of rural communities to have access to knowledge, access to a network, access to people that, you know, empower them and raise their voice. Leadership, I think it's self-explaining, and shared value. That's again aligning with what I talked about, impact economies, meaning maximizing financial and social goals or ecological goals at the same time. So that was our rough, you know, roughly explained our concept behind this, our sort of our machine. And now I want to talk about open innovation, because that was or is the core, and that's a business paradigm that's prevalent since, I think, 2003. And Henry Chesborough, that is also my co-author for the book, he really started this at Berkeley. He published his first book about open innovation. It just massively grew within industry, within governments, within NGOs. And that's why I want to explain it in much more detail here. And if you search on LinkedIn for open innovation jobs, 20 years back, there were none. And now it's just massive, right? There's so many positions revolving around this because it's so powerful. So let me briefly explain. So that's an innovation funnel, right? Usually if a company wants to develop a new product or service, they use their internal technology base. Let's say Tesla wants to develop a new electric motor. They just, put their engineers to work and they get the product and then they, put it on the market. Now you see all these holes in this funnel, right? Meaning there might be technologies that are useless for the company itself. Let's say Tesla developed a electric motor and a spillover effect happened, meaning besides having the new technology, they also discovered a great chemical process. So, but they don't have any use on their business model. So what they can do is they can spin it out, license it out to other firms' market, right? So putting IP to work, not collecting dust on the shelf. Then we see now, for example, Apple wants to create an electric vehicle, right? And they clearly cannot do it by themselves because their core expertise is not automotive. So they can leverage external technology bases, right? Let's say they have a supplier and they can say, hey, you guys are taking care of production because we want to have a new product in a new market. So we need to be open, right? We need to externally source our technologies. And yes, and this is the same for external technology insourcing for your current market, right? Let's say Tesla says, I don't want to spend a lot of money for, the new electric motor. I just source it in from outside. And the last sort of process is that internal technologies, they can be formed into a venture that has a new market. Let's say Tesla has a subdivision and says, this chemical process is now targeting a new market and we spin out or make a new venture for that. So that was a brief introduction to open innovation. If you want to learn more, read Henry's books, read my book. I'm talking about this specifically then for smart villages. And I just need to look on the clock. I think that's sort of self-explaining. We tweaked sort of this framework, open innovation, to smart villages, meaning everything was centered around the pain points of the villagers, right? So we did a lot of research, what's going wrong in the villages, what do they need, and then we looked for technologies or service business models, and then looked out for companies, startups, NGOs, government entities, right, to sort of bring a solution. Then we formed ecosystems, formed business models, and in the end we pivoted, we co-innovated with the rural villagers and gave them the product and say, use this product and tell us what's wrong with the product, what can we improve. In the end we had some innovation process, some circle, and in the best case a proof of concept emerges, and with that we could go to scaling partners such as the government or big corporations. An example about this, because now it was very theoretical, and now that's an example from Andhra what we did. This is a construct we theoretically built, so that would have been the best scenario. But let me just briefly talk what we did, what we could achieve. So Big Head is a e-commerce startup that provides agri inputs for farmers. So they deliver to their doorsteps, so the farmer doesn't need to go to the city and to shops, and they get very good market prices. And what we did was we had another ecosystem partner, which is Plantix, and Plantix is a plant disease detection. So what the farmer is doing when the farmer detects a disease on the crop, they can make a picture of the crop, and then the AI will tell them, oh, this is the disease, right? And that's very important for farmers, of course. So we said, why not linking these two entities? So let's say the farmer detects a disease and says, hey, this is what I have. Now I need a solution, right? I need some pain relieving solution. So Big Hat can then deliver the medicine to the farmer. So through Plantix, Big Hat gets a lead, and Big Hats then ships to the rural farmer. So we have created sort of a small ecosystem that was in pilot phase, but was very wonderful. And of course, we wanted to extend this, but due to time and some other constraints, we couldn't really finish that. But I think to that time, to that date, they both are collaborating, which is a very good example for innovation ecosystems, open innovation ecosystems, to put technology and business to work and create impact that's really good, because we always argued a farmer cannot use 32 tools, right? A farmer wants to have one app, and the farmer doesn't care where to start. If the farmer starts to Big Hat or Plantix, doesn't matter, but everything should be connected. That's a big value we could provide. Some of success stories, I think due to time, maybe I tell about one, which is Store King. Store King is a startup from India, and we had massive success because they solved a very prevalent challenge of shopkeepers. Because shopkeepers, as you all know, they need to get their supplies from cities. They need to abandon their shop. The family is, like grandfather or grandmother needs to be taken care of. So there's a lot of challenges. Then there's market price discrimination through caste or other issues. So what they did is saying, hey, we have a platform. You get, market prices from the wholesale, and we deliver everything to your doorstep. And it just was a massive success because it solved so many problems, and it was with no risk. And the government was so much excited that they pushed us to scale it so tough or so massively that Store King had to break because they were saying, hey, we moved too quick. We need to get more resources. So that's an example of how villager pain point and market-driven business innovation come together and create a wonderful ecosystem where both benefit. Some quick learnings. Maybe I skipped that. Maybe that's good. Business model adaptation, difficulties. That's everything in the book in detail. I just want to pick one here for you guys to also shed light on the business perspective of stakeholders that are doing innovation. There was a big disconnect between the CEOs and the people managing these projects. So I was after India, I was in the US and taking care of a lot of corporate communication and selling our project to companies. And these CEOs or C-level guys, they were like, "Wow, that's amazing! Let's do this, right? That's perfect. I'll tell my guys in the US or in India or anywhere else on this planet." But then there was this disconnect. There was no alignment between, the CEO that sort of sees that as a pet project and the guys actually doing it. So that's what we needed to learn by heart. And but that's a great learning because since ever we learned this, we were very rigid in the process to say we need to have alignment and commitment throughout your organization. Otherwise, we cannot move in the speed we want to, right? To put this on the ground, to test it with the villagers, and eventually then create scale and impact. My last learning is a very personal learning. I just read it aloud. It is astonishing to experience the massive willingness to adopt new technologies from the rural population in Andhra Pradesh. I cannot even digitally pay my coffee at a cafe in Munich, but swipe my credit card in a small Indian village. And that was just blowing my mind, right? In a very small village in India, I've seen the people were so open towards technology and digital transformation. As soon as they see a benefit with some small risk, they take it and they run, right? It's just astonishing. And me coming from Europe, I was like, why are my people not like this, right? I just cannot pay digitally in a cafe in Munich, and I can swipe my card in an Indian shopkeeper machine, and a machine shopkeeper has, and I get my money. So it was just wow. If we have I think we don't have time for this. That's a new sustainable development model that revolves around impact investing. It is quickly introduced in my book, but it's also written very well by Sir Ronald Cohen. It talks about how we can link impact investing to traditional NGO work, sustainable development work, but we don't have time. Sandeep asked me to briefly share some my learnings. So my journey is sort of, the premise of my journey is now sort of expanding my mindset and career through intercultural collaboration. And what I mean with this is, like, I started very, normal. Like, I did my bachelor's in Germany, my master's in Germany, and it's very linear. It's sort of expected by society. It has sort of a narrow focus and comes with no risk, right? It's very comfortable. But then I went to study at UC Berkeley as an international student, and that led me to the NGO field research in India and in Andhra Pradesh. That led me to my scholarship at Berkeley Haas, one of the most prestigious business schools. And it led me to this work structure I set up, which is linked between Europe, India, and the US. And that comes with higher risk. It's, of course, progressive. It's way more unexpected. It has a broad focus, but it gives a huge opportunities, and it expands really the mindset of career. And it was just a blessing. And since ever since, the magic sort of happened, and I'm very grateful to that I did this journey. And it's still day one, right? We can start every day to sort of change our lives. And Sandeep asked me to have some, personal advice. I'm not the person to really have rich experience because I'm not, an old wise man. But let me just briefly, the things what I learned in my life so far is, like, study broadly and hard as early as possible. Surround yourself with people you can learn from. Have mutual change. Challenge yourself, your experience, your expertise, whatever, right? Smart people around you just is a blessing. Be open to new cultures, thought processes, and mindset. That's what I experienced in Andhra, right? I was very open. I absorbed this. I learned from this. So I hope we all can do this, because then our country, our world becomes even smaller, and it becomes better. Then always avail yourself of opportunities, right? Whenever you talk to people, at least there's one incident where they say, oh, I had this one opportunity, but I didn't do it. I was too lazy. I was too comfortable. Yeah, it doesn't matter now in retrospective, it's gone. So avail yourself of opportunities, just take it, right? I got this opportunity when I was in Berkeley. Solomon said, Werner, you should work for me in India, go to Andhra Pradesh. I didn't even know that a state was called Andhra Pradesh, but I just did it. And it made me talk to you today, right? It's just amazing what brings these opportunities if you take them. And eventually find your dreams and fight for them. Very cliche, but it's true. So it's all about the people. I had a wonderful time in Andhra Pradesh. Your people treated me very well. I have friendships to that date. It was one of the most intense and rewarding years in my life. And yeah, thank you for listening. And let's stay in contact. And I think we have a few minutes, so thank you so much. I'm happy to answer questions.
That was a very comprehensive one, Werner. And thank you so much for having such warm and generous remarks about India. And it is even more pleasure to note from you, because for two reasons. Definitely representing, if not representing, but at least a kind of perception that I can see from an American. And second thing is because you have done a lot of work with the Indian government, or the government of Andhra Pradesh, a state government of India, one of the state governments of India. And you yourself coming from Berkeley and the project in collaboration with Berkeley and the state government of Andhra Pradesh, I'm sure you must have digged into a lot of real-time numbers, facts, problems, and yeah, so the numbers might not be what the media wants us to see and be happy about, but probably since it's coming up from somebody who has real time worked on this, and I'm so glad to note that we are moving forward with progressive thoughts and intentions, and especially something like sustainability and the rural empowerment, rural development, and all at all facets is definitely very important. So that somewhere I personally feel that there should be a reverse migration to rural India and stop this rapid urbanization. That is what I personally always feel, and there should be villages, there should be some part of the country always to look back instead of all these skyscrapers and these high motorized transportation networks and all this. There should be some part which is attached at the same time detached. So and that can happen only when that rural segment is independent and they feel that they are economically strong, and until unless that happens, I think this urbanization will continue, which is not good for any nation, neither the world as well. I don't know. I feel it is very important to have a strong rural segment, and you have worked on it, and I'm so glad that it all happened. I'm just curious to know two things. First thing is that was there any specific outcome of this particular project, and for how long were you associated? Is it still in working phase, or it is like kind of done and
Sure. So specific outcomes were measured through our assessment. So we had a process where we defined KPIs, like what we want to achieve in terms of impact. And then we measured this through data collection. And we had interns in every village, and they were, going around to people, and people that were, participating in pilots, for example, and ask them recurring questions like from a month, in 2 months, in 3 months, like how much did this product or technology improve your livelihood, for example. And so we had KPIs like income, for example. And so we could measure these KPIs, and we had, for example, the stalking with our group. What we measured, we had 10% increase of income through our intervention period of time. So that what we did, and we needed to do that because the government asked us to do, right? They were saying, what are you guys doing? So we needed to give them these results. And your second question, this project is still very successful. It is expanded to Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya. So there are 3 states right now, and they are doing great. They are still following the same approach, and I'm sort of still associated at some capacity what I can do. But if you want to know more, it's smartvillagemovement.org, where you can see what's going on right now. Maybe I just put it in the chat, but then you can see.
I made a note of it. Yeah, sure, you can. Okay, okay. So you're working with the other 2 governments actively on this, on more or less a similar lines?
I used to work with Arunachal government. Yeah, I had the pleasure to introduce the project to the chief minister, Pema Khandu, and but I'm not actively working in this capacity, right? I'm advising whatever I can, but right now I'm not working actively.
Okay.
That's my position.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful. I'll stay connected with you even offline after this session. I have a couple of things on my mind which I would want to discuss. And apart from that, it was a brilliant one. Any other questions that anybody wants to, or general conversation or an interaction? Maybe what we can do is, I have just discussed with Sandeep on how we can do the next session or a next interaction with you, because as a universities, as a part of the university and as such the educational institutions, I strongly feel we have a huge role to play and take this mission of sustainability and innovation, or the climate change or the environmental issues, the pressing world problems at our own level, because these are the places where innovation and these are the places where the real thinking should happen. So, probably next time we will have a more interactive session with more like minded people from the university and from the SRM group, because it's very important that we take this as one of our key areas of interest. Yeah, and I also have a couple of things that I would want to discuss after the session. Maybe I'll just write to you, or maybe if you could leave me your number, I'll just share my number on your email. So probably I could have a chat and we can take it forward if it works.
Sounds wonderful. I'm very happy to stay connected and see how we can pull off.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Werner. It was wonderful meeting you, and we'll look forward for many more interactions in future with you. And keep up the good work and keep inspiring us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making this inspiring one. Because your journey from Germany to getting into the School of Business and getting associated with very good profile people like Solomon Darwin sir, and as well as Henry Chesbrough, who is the father of open innovation, and your passion towards India, coming all the way from India, from US, and staying here and working with us in India, and also you added value for society as well as to human lives. You didn't stop it till now. You went there back, and you are in collaboration with US and UK governments, and you want to continue this journey. It's really impressive and so good of you. It's really my pleasure. I worked with you, and we shared. We are in both common lines. Thank you so much for making this event a very inspiring one, and we are looking forward for a long journey with you, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep.
Thank you, Werner. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you very soon again. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Sandeep, for organizing and getting this done. Thank you so much.